Hello everyone, welcome back to a novel review book podcast. My name is Seamus, I'm the host. Thank you so much for joining me. If this is your first time, thank you so much for clicking on. And if this is not your first time, then thank you so much for coming back. Today I'm going to be talking about the book I Was There by Hans Peter Richter. And it is February, which means for the World Book Tour, we are heading to Germany, if you couldn't already tell from the title of the book and the author of the book. If this is your first time joining me, I will just briefly say the World Book Tour is an idea I had about wanting to, read more widely. So in January, I went to Italy. I didn't actually go to Italy. I went to Italy through books, and in February, I'm going to Germany. And the rules are simple. When I'm going to that country, I have to find an author from that country writing about that country. So today, Hans Peter Richter is a German man who's writing about German things in this book. And that's the idea of it. So 12 different countries, of course, 12 months in the year. And yeah, thankfully it's February, because January always goes on for a couple of years, and then all of a sudden it's like October and you're like, where did the year go? But it is February now. We are going to a new country, Germany. We're starting with this Hans Peter Richter, I Was There. Really frighteningly, harrowingly raw, emotional story about what it was like to be a child growing up in the 30s under the National Socialists, the Nazi regime. I will get to that in a second. But first I just want to talk about this book, which I received this week. Ooh, knocking the hedgehog. I received this book, David Rocklin, The Electric Love Song of Fleischerberger. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. It was sent to me by Ozo Literary from Alicia, one of the publicists there, which was fantastic. She also sent me this bookmark, which I absolutely love. I love the books on top of the bear. And this was, it looks like a fantastic book. And I thought it was just incredibly, just a great time to sort of appear, because it's about a man that is born in Germany at the sort of turn of the 20th century. And it's about his life. You know, it says he grows up, he's thrice nearly dead. He's an inventor, a silent film star, a pioneer of the mind, but above all, it's a love song. So it looks like this really fun kind of, eclectic kind of story, kind of like speculative fiction, maybe cradle to grave, hopefully, because I love cradle to grave stories. But this incredibly, wild adventure of a book. The book itself is incredibly well made, which I have, strong feelings about. If the book feels really nice and is really well made, it's a big tick in my box. It's published by Thane and Prose, so thank you so much as well, guys. Fantastic book, and I thought just, so telling to arrive in the week that I go to Germany through books, a book about a German guy. So that's very cool. Very keen to get into that very soon. Just wanted to highlight that. A bit of housekeeping. If you would like to like and subscribe, I would greatly appreciate that. If you would like to give me a 5-star review, I'd also greatly appreciate that. Chuck a comment if you're on YouTube. I love getting them. I love reading them. I love responding to them. I love conversing with you guys. But otherwise it's just a free podcast. So just sit back and enjoy yourselves. No stress. Let's have some fun here. I am reporting how I lived through that time and what I saw. No more. I was there. I was not merely an eyewitness. I believed. And I will never believe again. That's the opening testimonial to this book, and it's written by none other than the author himself, Hans Peter Richter. It's an incredibly raw and honest opinion to put there, that he was not merely an eyewitness to these accounts. He was not merely just a person ferried along for the ride under the National Socialists, under the Nazi regime. He actively believed and participated in what he thought was something that was moving towards a better world. And reading a story like this, all I can say is, thank God for democracy. Thank God that we live in a world where someone can have an experience like this or live a life like this and still be honest and, able to put his hands up and say, I was completely wrong, and write his stories for us to read. And I think that's incredibly important. That might sound, but I think it's incredibly important that we do get these kind of stories, because it sort of humanizes them. And I'm not saying we need to humanize the Nazis, of course, but it does allow us to understand how we can understand and trace how something like this actually happened in the world, because we don't want it to happen again. So it's really important to actually get these kind of stories and understand how the Nazi regime came about and what it was like for people actually living under Nazi German rule, and what it was like to experience this kind of life. So I think it's a really brutal and honest story. I thought it was harrowing at points. how they achieved what they wanted to, how the Nazis actually sort of, I guess, conned an entire population of people into believing that what they were doing was right. So, I mean, it's a really interesting time growing up in the 30s in especially Germany, because there's a lot of ethnic nationalism going on. It is a great period of sort of like this ethnic nationalism. And I mean, for the most part, a lot of Germans don't see this as bad things. In fact, most Germans don't see this as a bad thing. And a lot of the wider world doesn't really see it as a bad thing either, because, coming out of World War One, then you've got the Great Depression. For Germany to be rising up again in a sort of way of establishing themselves as a country isn't perceived as a bad thing. And it's not really, people aren't really that wary of it at the start, because they are an incredibly poor country that then starts to turn their lives around through this kind of like idea of national identity and being German. And I think actually I might jump straight into a quote, because I've got a quote here to not back that up, but sort of capture how they started it. First, before I actually get into this quote, I realized as I was just struggling to find the page there, that I didn't actually say this book is I Was There by Hans Peter Richter. It's the translated edition by Edith Kroll, Puffin Books. I just wanted to put that out there just in case you are looking for this exact copy. And of course, I'm quoting from page 81 now. I should also briefly say that this is a story about a young boy growing up in the 30s in Germany under Nazi Germany rule, under the rule of Adolf Hitler. And it's just kind of like about his experiences in his day-to-day life. And that might seem really simple, but of course he joins the young Hitler Youth and stuff like that. So it's about understanding and sort of tracing how just a young boy can be influenced and pulled into this world that is incredibly violent, but how it seems so almost innocent on the surface, and how they manage to pull these children in and indoctrinate them into their beliefs. So this was, now just going back, I've got this quote, and this is kind of like what I'm talking about in terms of this ethnic nationalism. So I've got this quote here, and it's about to be Hitler's birthday, and this family with the young boy are talking about how they're going to celebrate Adolf Hitler, celebrate the Führer. And they say, well, let's have a meal for him. And then mother says, well, what are we having on the birthday? Blah, blah, blah. Mother didn't have to think for long. Eintopf, she said, because it'll be the first Sunday of the month, and you know we're supposed to have a stew once a month. But mother, father remonstrated, he really deserves better than that. You'll have to admit he accomplished quite a bit. Do you remember how he lived before 1933? We didn't have any veal cutlets then, and I was out of work and my unemployment benefits barely covered the rent. We didn't have enough to eat. We suffered hunger, real hunger. It's hard to imagine that today. We had no clothes. Our furniture was taken to the pawnbrokers piece after piece, and I either hung around at the unemployment office or sat at the park bench somewhere to get away from the worry in your face. And then it sort of goes on about how they received help from their grandparents. And so this is sort of capturing what life was like in Germany. They were incredibly poor. They were selling off pieces of furniture. They didn't have new clothes. They were starving. And then sort of Hitler comes in and turns these things around. And, they're celebrating this because it is something to celebrate. A lot of people aren't that, I guess, involved in politics in that kind of way. They're more concerned with can I put food on the table? That's kind of like their immediate thing. That's kind of like the immediate marker to success. Oh, this guy came into politics and straight away our lives turned around. Food was on the table. Things were more bountiful. I managed to get a job. These are big things in the lives of ordinary people. So this is kind of like one of the main first steps as to how Hitler actually rose to power. It's providing, this ethnic nationalist idea of we are German and we can fight through this. And look, we were a poor country, but now we're on the rise. We've got jobs. We've got a good economy. Everyone's well fed. We're rising as one. We're rising as the German people. And you can see why people would be swayed by that, because if you're starving and then someone says, well, here, take some food. I'm going to provide you with food. Then they're going to be like, okay, well, I like you then because you're good. You're providing me with food. We know how it was before and we see how it is today. And it's that kind of history and memory that plays a huge part in his rise to power. But the real kind of frightening aspect of this story is seeing how, it's one thing to be sort of, I guess, swayed politically because you've managed to acquire food now and a job and are living a better life like that. But it's the way they kind of indoctrinated the kids into their belief systems, I think, is the most frightening, because that's how you can really make change, is starting, from the base level, the kids, and making sure you rise them up into a world that you want to execute, I guess. And, you just see it through little things as well. And I think it's so fascinating because you see it through incredibly little things. And there's the Olympics are coming to Berlin. and the Hitler Youth are taking part, and they're going to have some competitors in it. And I guess utilizing sport is such a frighteningly masterful way to do this, because everyone loves sport. It's kind of like the great equalizer among us, in that it doesn't matter what's going on. If there's a good game on, or if there's a big sporting competition, like, people drop everything to partake and to watch and everything like this. So sport is like a really great way to I guess start the indoctrination process, and everyone wants to take place in sport, and everyone wants to be a famous sports star. So bringing sport into the lives of the kids and ensuring that the Jungvolk or the Hitler Youth are going to partake is a really fascinating way. But then they sort of go a bit further, and I've got this quote here. They're trying to select which students are going to take part in the games. And then the teacher says, obviously, only those boys can take part in the final contest who belong to the Jungvolk or the Hitler Youth and who own uniforms. We have to insist on that, if only because of the uniform clothing. What kind of an impression would our delegation make if it were to assemble with each competitor wearing a different coloured suit? No, we will appear in closed formation, in brown shirts. And then it sort of goes on like that. And it's kind of creating this idea that, like, you've got to be with us if you want to be with us. And utilizing kids to do that, I think, is just a masterful way to do it, because when you're isolated as a kid, you feel incredibly isolated. Like, you don't care about what you're actually doing with your friends. You just want to be with your friends. And so this idea of, if you want to take part, you have to be part of the young Hitler Youth, and you have to be in uniform, is a great way to create this social cohesive national identity. Then of course kids are going to buy into it, and of course they're going to do it because they want to be part of something. They want to be with their friends and participating in what their friends are participating in. And so they go home and beg, Mum, Dad, please, can I join this Hitler Youth movement? Can I buy the uniform? Can you buy me the uniform? Which of course is then funding the Nazi Party, which is terrible. But it's this idea of, like, getting kids in and creating this sort of club that you want to be part of. And if you're not part of the club, you can't partake in a lot of things, which is incredibly divisive and incredibly, I mean, I keep saying masterful because it is masterful, but it's shocking the way they utilized kids for this thing. And it's really kind of frightening. And I mean, it really kind of made my skin crawl while reading these scenes, because they're so just wicked. One of the things I found really, I guess, difficult to wrestle with this story was I was feeling a lot of sympathy for the characters in this story, and you're kind of reading it going, oh, I feel really bad for them. And then you're remembering that they're Nazis, and you're kind of like, oh, well, they're Nazis. Like, do they deserve any kind of sympathy in any kind of format? And that was one of the things I've really kind of wrestled with this story. I think really what I came to the conclusion that I think what I'm really kind of feeling sorry for them about is the life that they lost, is the lies that they were sold to lead them on this path to destruction, to become such wicked individuals. It's like such a debasement of humanity that I think is just, it's just shocking, but it's just also fascinating to really watch how they pulled this off and how they created this idea of, like, the German National Socialists rising as one to defeat the evil. And I mean, another quote here, this episode's quite loaded with quotes, but I think it's really important to sort of highlight how they pulled it off, and it's kind of the lies that were told, and the propaganda that was told to these people. And here's another one that just sort of, I guess, it's about the invasion of Poland and how they sort of spun the story to be that they're the victim in this. And the quote goes, "Within 18 days, Poland was conquered. Sure, the French and the English felt obliged to declare war on us while we were advancing into Poland. They were bound by treaty to do that. But now Poland didn't exist anymore, and we've occupied one half, Russia the other. Tell me, what would tie England and France to a country that no longer exists? The Führer has made them a generous peace proposal. Why aren't they accepting the offered hand?" He stopped to look at each of us. "I'll tell you why. They don't want peace. They want war. And we have no alternative but to march against them too and defeat them. And all Germans must stand together in this war." And it sort of goes on from there. And it's just so fascinating. Like, this guy's telling these young kids, by this stage they're probably 16. He's saying, you know, we invaded Poland, and Poland now technically doesn't exist. And now the England want war with us. And why do they want war? Because Poland doesn't exist anymore. What are they defending? They want war because they want war. And we have no option but to defend ourselves. And it's just kind of like this complete spinning of truth. Like, you're admitting that you invaded Poland and have done something wrong, but it's this sort of like herd mentality of we're the victim that sort of led them to then go on and start this great war, because it's like, yeah, the English are coming for us and we have to defend ourselves. Like, don't let anyone else tell you different. We have to defend ourselves. And I guess it's the frightening thing to see these kind of passages in this story, because this is a time before social media. You've kind of only got access, the only information you have access to is the information being given to you. And basically you don't have to believe whatever story they're giving, but if you're in a complete echo chamber where the only stories are being told that you're a great person serving the German people really well and doing a really great job, and we're fighting the good fight, then of course you're probably going to believe it. If everyone around you is also believing it, you kind of move with the herd with these kind of things. So it's just kind of frightening how propaganda works, especially in a world before the internet, and how it's just kind of, you are just fed whatever story they feed to you, and you're told whatever they want you to hear, and you believe whatever they want you to believe. And I think that kind of brings me to my last quote, because all through this story, the story itself is really kind of simple. It's just these boys sort of trying to live their day-to-day in this Hitler Youth, and how the propaganda sort of affects them and builds them up to become these characters. But there's always one character, and one of the boys' father is actually a socialist, and he completely disagrees with the war, and he gets kind of, I guess, beat up for it a bit throughout the story. He's not a huge character, but he's very much against Hitler and the National Socialists. And he's very much against everything, and he can really see through the lies that are being told. And then on page 159, he's kind of got this complete, it's not a change of heart, but it's just kind of like this acceptance that he's also a German person. And it's kind of like he believes in Germany so strongly that it's almost to a fault, because I don't actually know this, but I assume he maybe would have had an opportunity to leave at some stage, but he believes in German and German identity. It's just a different German identity to what Hitler is espousing. So he's actually stayed, and he's gotten to now a part in the war where he says, Gunther's father took a deep breath. God, have mercy on us if we should ever lose this war, he said in a low voice. If they ask us to account for everything we have done to them, then I don't dare to think it through. I looked at the faces of all the Russians, dull, without expression. We mustn't lose this war, Gunther's father said at once, more in a hard voice. Not at any price. If they take me, I'd go to the front again. We must win. And it's kind of, even though the entire story, Gunther's father's been against the war and against sort of Hitler and what he's been trying to achieve in this war, he's now suddenly realized that, like, in for a penny, in for a pound, I'm here and I'm German. And if we lose this war, we are destroyed. And if we lose this war and we're held accountable for the actions we've committed, then we are in a really, really bad place, because we have done some terrible, terrible things, to the point that he's now prepared to go back to the front to continue fighting this war, just to defend this idea of what it means to be German. And I think it's really sad. And the book is just this tale of this boy that is sold a lie and led down a path that is completely evil. And that's kind of, I guess, the really sad truth of it, but also the beautifulness in it, in that we do get to read this story and understand what it was like for them, and to see why they were deceived, and to see why they became so evil and wicked, and to see the lies that were told, but also so that we can hopefully, as a human race, move forward and be able to identify and understand these threads that are utilized to propagate this hatred. So, the book itself, let's turn to the writing style. The book itself is not the most well-written book. It feels quite fractured, but I think that might also be part of the story itself, in that it does feel quite fractured. It feels quite truncated at certain stages, and it's not like this great book that you're reading. I guess for the literary reasons, it's more a book that you're reading for the social commentary on what was actually being committed in the story and during this period. So, it's an incredibly short book. It is only 170 pages, which I think is a really great length, because the writing style is not my most favored. If this was like a 500-page book, I think I would have struggled a lot more. But given it being so small and short as well, I think I was able to smash it in a few days, and it made for really kind of, I was just about to say light reading. It's not light reading, but it made for a really quick read, because the story does move quite swiftly through these events in history. So that was Hans Peter Richter's I Was There. Part 1 of Germany. Really, I think this was kind of a brutal read, to be honest. And I just want to also say, because every week I do paint a little tile to go with it, which is the very short intermission. I did have to paint a Nazi flag, and I can honestly say I never thought when I started this podcast I'd be painting a Nazi flag. Didn't enjoy painting the Nazi flag. So I just wanted to say that because, yeah, I just never thought I'd be here painting a Nazi flag for a book podcast, which is absolutely wild. But look, it's a tough one, isn't it? How do you rate a book like this? Honestly, I'm going to give it a 4 because I think it's incredibly important to read. I don't think it's a 4 in terms of literary style, but I think in terms of importance and reading and understanding and tracing the way these humans were manipulated and sold lies to become these absolutely wicked individuals is incredibly important and something that everyone should be consciously aware of so they can almost understand it in their own sort of social situations. So I'll give it a 4. I Was There by Hans Peter Richter. Well, thank you so much, guys, for listening to the episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. I hope it inspired you to fight against hatred and to read the book as well. I really enjoyed it, and I will be back in 2 weeks' time for the other German book, which is just as harrowing as well. I'm reading it now, and it's an incredibly brutal story. If you would like to like and subscribe, yeah, I'd greatly appreciate that. 5-star reviews also go a long way to helping other people find the show, but as always, just thank you so much for paying attention. So I think it's time to end this episode, and today a quote from Hitler, and this is from his speech on April 12, 1938 in Reichenberg in the Sudetenland, and he said, "And they will never be free again."